right, gents. 2 Saturday games plus all the college football. I mean, basically, have to make sure I don't get divorced between now and the end of the year. I think a lot of us know exactly what we're talking about here. Hey, ladies, come on board. Watch all football with good old Jay, with good old House, good old Raheem. You can't go wrong there. Raheem, I want to start with Ravens and Steelers. I've been very critical of Lamar Jackson against the Steelers. I think he has a Steelers problem. I have mentioned this multiple times over the last few years. I've thought long and hard about this game. I have a very strong take. I have a very strong stance. I love Baltimore this week. I don't like Baltimore. I absolutely love Baltimore. And I know how stupid that sounds. I understand all of the trends for the Steelers as an underdog. I understand what Mike Tomlin does when he is an underdog. I know Lamar Jackson can't beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just think the spot screams Baltimore. They had their bye. They had their warm-up game against the Giants. They kind of basically said, hey, Derrick Henry, we're leaving you in the garage against the Giants. We don't really need you. We are going to rev you up against the Steeler team that played a physical game last week against Philadelphia that showed some warts to me in that game against Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts had his way. Steeler defense has not been as good. And the Steeler offense without George Pickens has not been the same. I know it's crazy, Raheem. I think Baltimore by double digits on Saturday. How about that?
So that's where I am too. And I totally agree with you. I think the big thing is that you want to watch the injury report. It appears that TJ Watt was hurt on Sunday. He didn't practice on Tuesday, but he did return in a limited fashion on Wednesday. And we know the Steelers are 1-10 without TJ Watt since TJ Watt joined the Steelers. But also the other big injury is George Pickens. And we know that Russell Wilson likes to throw the ball down the field to George Pickens. And since he's been out of the lineup the last 2 weeks, 26 in EPA per play, 30th in success rate, 35% success rate without George Pickens. So that's been a major issue for this Steelers offense. But I also think the defense isn't necessarily the same. And look, I know they've limited Lamar Jackson. Look, the Ravens, 16 points, 10 points, 10 points, 13 points, 16 points, 13 points, 19 points, and 14 points in the games in which Lamar Jackson has played the Steelers. But I think this week is different. And I agree with you. If Pickens is out of the lineup, I think you smash the Ravens. And I also think you can bet the Ravens to win the AFC North at plus 130, because if they win this game, you got to remember the Steelers got Kansas City coming up. I think the Ravens are in a good position to pass this team.
Yeah, I like that assessment. I'm not prepared to lay all the points. I just can't do it. You know, all of the trends. I won't sit here and go through every single one of them. But, you know, Lamar Jackson is 1-4 straight up, 0-5 against the spread against Tomlin and the Steelers. As an underdog of 4 more points against the Ravens, the Steelers are 8-0 in franchise history. With Tomlin, they're 6-0 against the spread as a dog of more than 3 points against the Ravens. Also, Pittsburgh coming off of a loss, 10-1 against the spread after a loss by 7 or more points. There's a whole batch of additional numbers you could do that talk about how effective Mike Tomlin is against John Harbaugh, how effective the underdog has been in this series between these two teams. But I agree with how compromised the Steelers are, and we just watched it. The way that the Eagles exploited the secondary of the Steelers, and the Eagles were completely nonplussed by the pass rush of the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was supposed to be the strength. It was supposed to be putting Jalen Hurts into uncomfortable positions, disrupting the play calling of the Eagles. None of that came to pass. Speaking of pass, what Jalen Hurts did was come out and complete nearly every ball for 2 touchdowns and 200 yards in the first half and establish the dominance of the Eagles. The Ravens offense is better. I mean, you know, respectfully, all due respect to the Philadelphia Eagles, I think the Ravens offense is better. There have been questions with that offensive line for the Ravens, but my inclination is to just play Baltimore on the money line.
That's
do think that they're going to win.
Because I was going to ask you, Pittsburgh's been your dog. They've been your team. I was going to ask if you were taking them outright. And the answer to that question is no.
No. And honestly, I just want to say it on these airwaves. I got bullied into taking Pittsburgh against the Eagles. My preference for the dog on the show on Sunday was Dallas. Dallas was my favorite dog. I said on this show last Thursday how much I like them as a dog, but I got bullied. The Podfather was making fun of me for backing a bad team as a dog, and I said, okay, fine. Pittsburgh was so good to me all season long. It's fine. We accept it.
That's a lesson, House. We don't get bullied around here.
It's a lesson.
I don't care
We definitely don't get bullied.
We don't get bullied around here.
House, you've been hot all season long. Like if you look at your season long win record on picking every game, you've been hot. So you can't let anybody bully you.
Fair enough. I do like Baltimore on the money line. I'm not going to lay the points.
Okay, the other game. It's Houston and Kansas City, and it's very uncertain. So I'm going to keep the analysis kind of vague on this one, House. Can you go near this game knowing if Mahomes is or isn't playing? Like, I have no desire to go anywhere near this game right now. None.
The only thing that I would do is as long as the total is over 40, and I think it's still around 41 and a half.
41 and a half, correct. Yep.
Just play the under. Go ahead and play under because both of these teams have been under teams, and neither one of these teams can score in the second half of games for whatever reason. And maybe that's one way to tackle it. Play the second half under blindly. Go get that number right now with the total at 41 and a half. Go play second half under. I'm at a loss as to what to do until we know what's happening with Mahomes. I guess there might be some incentive to go ahead and grab the Texans plus the 3 points, because if we wake up Saturday morning and they say, you know what, we're going to be cautious with Mahomes, then getting the 3 is good. But who wants to back the Texans? The Texans stink. They've been fraudulent all season long. Dream has been on it. DeBundo's been on it. I don't want to be in that position, but I do like anything with a total at 40 or higher. I feel like the under is a strong play.
So I'm pretty angry about this because I planned on grabbing the 3 with the Kansas City Chiefs, and it was 2.5, 3 when it was believed that Carson Wentz was going to be in. But when you look at Patrick Mahomes, he kind of has that LeBron James type thing. Like, you all guys have watched LeBron James. He'll nick up his ankle, and it looks like he'll have a season-ending or a career-ending injury, and then he comes back the next play. And Mahomes has done that in football for the last couple of years. You'll see him, he'll suffer that crazy knee injury or ankle injury, high ankle sprain, and then he's playing the next week. And he's tough. I think he's tougher than he's given credit for. So it does appear that Patrick Mahomes is going to be out there. Me personally, if he's not out there, I'm betting the Chiefs. And because my model has this game at 5.7 for the Chiefs. They should be 5.5 point favorites. The only reason why this game is 3 is because Patrick Mahomes is injured. So it feels like we're getting some value. So I'm going to wait for the final injury report to come out. If Mahomes is out, I think you can if Mahomes is playing, I think you can lay the 3 safely. And I think if Mahomes is out, you can get even more value on Carson Wentz. I mean, let's be real. This Texans team, from a down-to-down perspective, you're 30th in offensive success rate, 39% success rate. Do we actually believe that the Chiefs with Carson Wentz is going to be that bad? And you can say what you want about Carson Wentz, but he's still being coached by Andy Reid. I think they can have higher than a 39% offensive success rate. And I think they should be able to run the ball, and I think they should be able to win this game. So wait for the final injury report and just play it accordingly. But I think the Chiefs are the side.
All right, we got a lot of games to break down for Week 16. House, your team got off to the big lead against the Saints. Saw the Saints come storming back after the quarterback change, survived the 2-point conversion, massive win. Philadelphia comes to town. You're a small underdog in the game. I feel like you have faded your team every single week. So I got to know, are you fading them again?
I mean, of course. But my first question is, how long is this game going to be? How long does the NFL is this going to be a 60-minute and 10-second game? A 60-minute?
Might be 59-45. I don't know. We might do that instead.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, and I'm still waiting to see the Sean Hockley punishment. He really should not be refereeing the playoffs. We already went through this. The way that I like this particular matchup, these games between these division rivals are always close. It doesn't really matter, sort of which team is up and which team is down. Philly has been up over the last, half decade or so, although the last time Washington made the playoffs, it was because Philly, did put in a tank job in the last week of the season, and Ron Rivera made the playoffs with this Washington team, with an under 500 Washington team in the bubble days. I am inclined to not want to mess around with 3.5, but I might buy a point. I might buy either a half point or a point. Philly -3 feels right to me. Philly -2.5, which is available on the FanDuel Sportsbook at -148. That feels really right to me. I understand that Philly is going to take this game as serious as they need to. They have an absolute prime opportunity to win out, beating the NFC East, all of their NFC East opponents down the stretch, and go grab that number 1 seed in the NFC and get that bye. And that will be really important to that entire team on both sides of the ball. So I think that they come out and handle their business against Washington. They just have more talent than Washington, and that's not a knock, but these games are close. So I don't want to lay anything over 3.
So my model has this game Eagles -4. The market's at 3.5. It seems like I'm right on market. This is weird because it felt like Jalen Hurts, they said he had a broken finger the other day, and he had his best game of the season, 25 of 32, 290 yards and 2 touchdowns, his best passing game of the season. And then they said that Saquon Barkley is playing through something undisclosed. I don't know what that means. So it feels like there's a lot of weird talk coming out of Philadelphia, and then they still end up performing. I just need to know more at this point in time. I mean, they even just said today that they sent Big Dom and Brandon Graham to Jalen Hurts' house to connect more with the team. So I don't know if, it's WVIP and Philadelphia. They're just creating all these false narratives and they're just angry Philadelphians. But I just don't this team is just so strange to me. So I can't really get a hold of it. My market is on, my model is on market. So I'm probably just staying away from this one.
All right, Raheem, let's see if you're staying away from Minnesota and Seattle. You remember last week, one of the few I got right was Green Bay laying the number. I loved Green Bay in the spot. I thought they'd be ready to go. They won that game from Jump Street. I know the injury report at the moment for Seattle is very up in the air. My gut, I think we're going to see Geno Smith. I do. And this game kind of reeks of season on the line, kitchen sink, throwing everything to the table for the Seattle Seahawks. I know House is invested. I know the Podfather is invested. I'd like it a lot more if I got 3 and the hook. Raheem, I like the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday.
This is tough for me. It just because until I see some definitive news on Geno Smith, I'm not making a play on this.
That's fair.
And
now, what if I tell you Geno Smith is going to play on Sunday?
Even then, I'm right on market for this game as well. I'm at Vikings -3.5. That's exactly where I'm at. So I'm just not seeing a big edge on this game. And it's just, I think this is a frustrating NFL week for me because there's games that I would ordinarily like, but there's injuries. Or there's teams I want to fade, but they end up playing somebody who's injured. So there's just not a lot of stuff on the board this week as far as sides.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would like to go ahead and tip my hat to the NFL schedule makers. They basically told us, go ahead and take Sunday off. I have a lot of Christmas shopping that I need to do. I'm going to do it
you got a show to do at 11 o'clock in the morning first. So you got to do it afterwards.
We'll have our show, and then, I watch Washington and Philadelphia, and hopefully that won't be a blowout. I get an early start. But Sunday afternoon, 4 o'clock, I'm gone. I'm there. I'm not watching any of those football games. I have no interest in them. But this Minnesota Seattle game, I can't unsee that Seattle offense. And the Seattle offense has not been good for several weeks now. They've been winning with defense, and it's been a good defense. They got exploited. I mean, we had what feels like to me a small sample size with the Seattle defense, where they played Arizona very well twice, and really, limited them. They had another good win in there against another sort of offense that's not very formidable. And then they got their pants pulled down on national TV, that defense by Green Bay, and an excellent, play calling by LaFleur. I think Kevin O'Connell is onto it, up to it, and I just can't trust that Seattle offense with or without Geno. This number will go to what, Dream? 7.5 if it's declared that Geno's out. Sam Howell was abysmal.
He stinks. He's I'm out on this game. If I see Sam Howell, I'm immediately buying out of it. So right. That my counter with that game, Raheem, is Geno Smith playing, and I like Seattle. I want to make that clear.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Sam Howell, he led the league in sacks last year. He was getting sacked at a level of like David Carr. Like record-breaking levels of taking sacks. You can't back that guy at all. And like, I just didn't like the way Seattle looked last week. I know you shouldn't be a prisoner of the moment, but they got pushed around by the Packers. And I think, KLC over there in Minnesota, he's just as good as a play caller as, my guy over there in Green Bay. So I'm a little scarred.
Finally, boys, Sunday Night Football. Good game because Dallas all of a sudden looks resurgent. Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield have been one of the best stories in the NFL this year. You can move it on that Tampa team, though, Raheem. 4 seems hefty.
Later points with Tampa. Last week, the Carolina Panthers, they took money against the Dallas Cowboys. They closed 2.5-point favorites. I know you got a venue switch. You got Tampa Bay on the road, but Dallas doesn't play well at home.
Awful.
Not only are they awful at home, you got Tampa Bay in a dome on a fast track, and that offense has been rolling.
I might be inclined to play an over here, but I've been impressed by Dallas. They're really like one dumb special teams play away from being legit, like making a legit playoff
in this
run.
Thing. Yeah, really in this thing. Crazy.
And honestly, it's the defense. The defense has improved.
Let me ask you guys a question. Who would you say is the better team, Cincinnati or Tampa Bay?
I'm the wrong person to answer him because I think if Cincinnati got in the playoffs in the AFC, they could actually beat Buffalo or Kansas City. I know. I'm still on that. Still dying on that hill.
I cannot, under any circumstances, give any credit to Cincinnati. They can't stop anybody. Anybody. It's the worst, defensive performance. They've had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to step up and show some toughness, and they don't have it. They can't do it.
So I asked that question for a reason, because Cincinnati was laying 6 to Dallas on the road. Tampa Bay's laying 3.5. Are you telling me that Cincinnati is that much better than Tampa?
No,
I'm not.
So, and that's where I have to lay points with Tampa Bay.
Right.
Understood. Very compelling case. And the Cowboys at home have been as bad a bet as you can find in the NFL.